Weimar Republic 1918 to 1923. The Weimar Constitution. Due to being forced into surrender, the Democrats didn't have a good start in Germany. However, with the Kaiser gone, the Democrats had a chance to create a new political system which was fair and free. This new government would be a republic, where an elected president is in charge. Due to the trouble in Berlin, the town they met to decide what form of government they would have was called Weimar. This led to the new German democracy to be called the Weimar Republic. The Weimar Republic had the set of rules on how it was to be operated. This is called a constitution. There was both good and bad rules in this constitution. The first president. The first elected president was Friedrich Ebert. He was a member of the SPD. This was a mildly left-wing party. Ebert promised reforms and freedoms. These included free elections, freedoms of religion, and freedoms of speech, better working conditions, and help for the unemployed. However, Ebert was faced immediately with a lot of very severe problems. The new constitution. The new constitution was designed for Weimar Germany, and this came with a lot of rules on how the country should run. Germany's new constitution would create one of the most free countries in the world. There were many freedoms guaranteed and a very fair election system. However, there was also severe weaknesses to this new system. Key features of the Weimar Constitution. The Weimar Constitution. The President. The President was elected every 7 years by the German people. The rule was supposed to be a powerful rule, but a limited one. They were effectively head of state with only few powers. However, these powers were quite significant. The President had control over the armed forces. They could dissolve the Reichstag or block new laws through a referendum, a national vote. Most notably, they had emergency powers under Article 48, allowing them to have complete power in a situation labelled as a crisis. The Chancellor. Similar to the UK Prime Minister, he was responsible for the running of the country. The Chancellor was supposed to be picked from the party with the most votes. However, this was not always the case in the Weimar Republic. They decided the laws, but these had to be supported by the majority of the people in the Reichstag to get these laws passed. The Reichstag. This was the German parliament, and they decided the country's laws. Members of the Reichstag are elected every 4 years. The German people. All men and women of the age of 20 can vote. Very advanced for its time, they elected the president and members of the Reichstag. Freedoms of speech and religion guaranteed in the Bill of Rights, allowing them to criticise the government but in a peaceful manner. German federal system. An important feature of Germany is its regions. Germany was made up of patchwork of various German states. These states became known as Länder. There were 17 Länder in Germany in 1918, including Bavaria, Saxony, and Prussia. Under the new Weimar Constitution, each Länder had its own regional parliament, elected within its own region. They had the power to make certain laws and the ability to run their own education and judicial system within their leader. The central government, the Reichstag, was still supreme among the Länder, but the regions did have some autonomy, which was the freedom for external control. Strengths and weaknesses. Germany's new constitution had good stages of progress, but the system was also riddled with corresponding problems, which in turn led to the Weimar democracy's collapse. Strengths. Proportional representation, also known as PR, allowed citizens greater choice in who to vote for. There were smaller parties with a real chance of some form of power and getting their voice heard, mainly through coalition deals. It had checks and balances built in, which should have balanced power and protected its excessive use. Great deals of freedoms were granted. The freedom of press, the freedom of speech, and the freedom of religion were all guaranteed in the Bill of Rights within the Constitution, which also allowed all men and women to vote at the age of 20. Article 48 was important in time of emergency. In the 1919 elections and later elections, the majority of German people voted for pro-Weimar parties. The problem with the Weimar Constitution was not the Constitution itself, but rather its misuse by the Democrats in charge, which brought it to disrepute, being held in low esteem by the public. Weaknesses. Proportional representation provided so much choice that it could cause a number of problems. Extreme parties had the chance to become more powerful than their actual support as potential coalition partners. No part dominated enough to rule independently. Coalitions were frequent, as was the collapse of the governments when coalition deals broke down. This made Germany appear politically unstable and made decisions making very hard. 8 coalitions were formed between November 1918 and August 1923. Socialist parties like the SPD were forced to pay attention over the middle class voters in an effort to win power. Many of their working class supporters felt betrayed. Many of the new constitutional features were simply not supported by a significant majority of the people. Democracy, freedoms and PR was alien to many Germans who dismissed them as a product of defeat. Article 48 allowed too much power in the hands of one person. This meant that in a crisis they could rule almost alone. The new Weimar Republic had not won the support of some key groups, such as the army, the civil service and the judiciary. 1919 election. One effect of using the PR voting system was the rapid increase of political parties. This provided greater choice but also led to such division of the vote that unstable coalitions often had to be created. Parties were split along left-wing and right-wing ideology lines. However, they were also split on their attitudes toward the new Weimar democracy itself. Small but significant parties were deeply opposed by the new order. Results: pro-Weimar parties made up around 86% of the vote in the 1919 election. This showed acceptance of the Weimar democracy. This was important as the Weimar democracy was still new. Anti-Weimar parties only made up around 12% of the vote. With no clear majority for any party, a coalition government was created with the SPD, DDP, the centre parties, which were to be led by Ebert. These 1919 election results proved, despite the opposition from extreme right and left-wing groups, that the majority of parties were pro-Weimar in 1919.